That's right, man. I'm gonna react to Ben Shapiro. I'm gonna act and react to Ben Shapiro right here on my live stream.
Inequality. That inequality means that it is government's job to rectify those past ills through newfound discrimination. By violating individual rights, we can rectify the inequalities of the past. Now, this comes along with some pretty ugly rhetoric and some pretty ugly philosophy. The idea here is that we can determine whether you get to speak on politics or whether your group should be targeted by the government based on historical injustice or current inequality. But this means that certain groups outweigh other groups when it comes to who we should listen to about politics. If your group has been more victimized in the past, then we should listen more to your group, and your group should get certain benefits from the government in order to fix that inequality that previously existed. So there's a hierarchy of groups that exists on college campuses in terms of who we're supposed to listen to. It exists in politics in terms of which groups government programs are supposed to benefit.
Who groups are supposed to benefit?
The very top folks
At the very top.
against most supposedly, and the people who we therefore have to use government in order
You have to use government for
LGBT folks,
LGBT
black
folks,
folks, and it would be Hispanic folks,
Hispanic folks.
and it would be Jews, and
That'd be Jews as yourself,
the
Ben.
hierarchy of intersectional groups. And if
Intersexual
on
groups.
this particular hierarchy, that's because you rank high on the so-called power hierarchy.
The power hierarchy.
You should not have a role in determining how government is done.
You should have a role in telling how the government is done.
Is a result of past discrimination and past evil, and the government can fix that for you. The government
can fix that for you.
For you. This is where the check your privilege arguments come from. You say, listen, the policy you're espousing is unfair. The policy you're espousing is
Shit, I can't.
and it's cracking down
I
on
should have
one
done it
group
first
of
before.
another group.
No, good, but
That
no.
policy is just not good policy.
It's not good policy, Ben
The
Shapiro.
response to that is you don't get to talk about that because you are a beneficiary of the system that previously existed. Shut up. And this makes for not only a bad politics, but also it makes for bad policy itself. Because it turns out the government is not actually capable of rectifying every imbalance. See, the intersectional argument is an argument that states too much. It says that every inequality that exists all across American society is the result of this history of inequity. Every inequality, every disparity is discrimination. Every time you look at a poor black guy, it's the fault of a rich white guy. Every time you see one group that is disproportionately imprisoned,
Yeah, I got
another
it.
group that is disproportionately imprisoning. Every time there is some sort of imbalance, that is an imbalance that is due to racism, bigotry, sexism, homophobia of some sort. But that's not true in a free country. It is true that there are after effects to historic discrimination. Of course, that's true. And those after effects have impact.
That's after effects.
Certain people have.
Yeah,
In a free country in which discrimination is not currently practiced, levels of mobility are based on your group. To discriminate against one group at the expense of another group is to forward discrimination, make discrimination worse. Worse, what happens here is that this leads to crackdowns on actual fundamental rights. So you'll see this argument that is expressed in the New York Times recently, that freedom of speech is being...
Look at the bubble you're in, Ben. You're in your own little bubble there, Benny. Benny boy, you're in your own little bubble. You look at Ben Shapiro's in his own little bubble. Hey, Ben, how you doing, buddy? Your little bubble.
With regard to the argument against capitalist economics, on behalf of intersectional theorists, what they say is capitalism, freedom, has created inequalities because it is reinforcing a hierarchy, and therefore, if we just get rid of capitalism, then we can get rid of the inequality. Not only is that bad policy,
It only is that bad policy.
invasion of individual rights that the government was created not to do. The government also happens to be really bad at rectifying these imbalances. So whenever the government tries to rectify these imbalances, it tends to make the imbalances even worse in a wide variety of ways. To take a quick example, President Obama, late in his administration, issued a ruling from the executive branch that said that all private contractors with the federal government would no longer be able to look at the criminal records of people who are applying for jobs. What this was designed was to increase the number of black people who were employed, because what Obama thought was that statistically there are a larger number of black folks with criminal records. We want to make sure they're employed, so we'll make sure that employers can no longer look at criminal records. What ended up happening is employers instead started using group data.
Group data, huh, Ben?
That they were criminal, which is wrong and should not be done, because they could no longer check criminal records. Criminal records allow you to check individuals. The same thing is true with affirmative action. When it comes to affirmative action, the argument is that black folks in the United States have been historically discriminated against. Therefore, we should set up a system to rectify that imbalance by allowing folks who have lower scores on their SATs or people with worse GPAs to get into particular colleges. The problem is, affirmative action actually creates a dropout effect among a lot of black folks who are getting in through affirmative action. Dropout rates of folks who get into
affirmative action, man. I don't agree with that either, but I'm with you on this one, Ben.
Who get into that same
I agree with you. No affirmative action.
It turns out that most people through SATs and GPA are going to precisely the college they should probably be going to in the first place. And by the way, where you go to college is not a final determinant of how you do in life. There are plenty of people who go to Harvard who are failures, and there are plenty of people who go to community college who do just fine.
Yeah, if they can get a job that pays good wages, because Mexicans lower the wages. They come here, they want to work for less, and Republicans are for cheap labor, so they're working against their own cause. I'm not for raising minimum wage, but they're bringing the wages down in general because they're Mexicans. We want to work for less, Benny boy.
Government is the source of everything good in your life. You didn't build that. Right? The government's job is to protect.
Well, actually, we didn't build that. It's kind of true. But the government didn't either. It's like the illegal Mexicans, Strawberry pickers, We can get welders, we can get construction workers that are Mexican. They can go cheap.
Everybody should finish up in the same place, just as individuals. And the only way to do that is to see the government as the
No, that's not true. I don't agree with Cortez.
Negative rights advocates who believe that the only rights that you actually have in a state of nature are rights from other people, meaning that I have a right for you not to kill me, I have a right for you not to steal my property, I have a right against you, you're not allowed to invade my freedom of speech. Right? These are negative rights the government is supposed to protect because they're rights that exist in the absence of you harming me. The left believes in positive rights, right, which says that right to housing, right to health care, right to education,
to health care,
right to all sorts of things in which they get to point a gun at somebody and force that person to provide something for you. Right? The negative rights argument operates in a world of what they call in economics Pareto efficiency. In other words, we are seeking a system in which everyone is better off without making anyone worse off. But that's not the world of the positive rights argument. The positive rights argument operates in a world of redistributive justice, right? This slogan you're going to get.
Yeah, redistributive justice. Yeah, Ben, tell us all about that.
Social justice.
Social justice, man.
The idea of redistributive justice is pushed by philosophers like John Rawls, who you'll hear from if you take a philosophy or poli-sci course here, I'm sure. And his basic concept.
Yeah, poli-sci course. It's Ben's little bubbles, baby. He's in his own little bubbles.
Throughout your life are gotten rid of. And we have to level the final outcome of any particular.
We need to level any playing field. We need to get the illegal Mexicans out of here. We need to put up a border wall. We need to get rid of Mexicans so everyone has a decent chance. Not a guaranteed chance, it's a decent chance.
Why are so many people wealthy in this country when so few people have health? Right? The idea that he's saying there is that the country is only just if you force some people to pay the bills of other people. Now, the positive rights argument places obligations on others that they don't actually have in a world of negative rights. So when people say there's a right to health care, sounds really nice. It means that health care is going to be provided, right? Well, not unless you're actually willing, in the end, to point a gun at a doctor and force that doctor to provide care at a price of your choosing. Because if there's any opt-out, then you don't have a right to health care. If you have duty to serve at bakeries, for example. You see in the left. But according to the positive rights advocates, you do. And this is supposed to fix all of your problems. Okay, none of this actually fixes everybody's problems, because here is the problem with this. Okay, the essence of positive rights is force. The essence of civil society and social fabric is voluntary. Happy, thriving society, you allow people to do what they want. You want an upset, angry society, you force people to do what you want. The positive rights argument forces people to do the things you want at their expense. Their individual rights become less important than your desire for crap. You don't get to do that in a free and open society. So when politicians promise you they're going to...
Well, the reason that we have bakeries being forced to make gay cakes, and the reason why the government's been all backwards, is because they're left-leaning. They're left-wing. And the reason they're left-wing is because of the illegals coming in here. Voting left, pushing the agenda left, and you know what? Once the culture goes and it starts embracing leftism, then it's hard to stop it. You got people in here pushing for it. So now there's just a demand for it, and so now Jack, the baker, now has to make cakes, Jack Phillips. Because you know what? This is what society wants.
That's correct. She's correct about that. And then she was doing it on a basis that
Our culture is gone, folks. Our culture is gone.
Well, the reason it was going to force up the price of rent is because people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez believe that everyone has a right to housing. And the way they then establish that right to housing is by trying to force corporations to pay for the housing. Corporations don't.
Yeah, we're going to be in government housing if we don't close the border. Everyone's going to be in government housing. It's going to make us poor.
Rent control. We got to force people to rent out at a price that we want.
Because that's what the Democrats want. They want us to be controlled by the government. That's why the left can never win an election again.
Why the hell would you build it in the first place? So the actual policy that was intended.
I'll take the right over the left any day.
More equitably distributed ends up with fewer units of housing and fewer people with actual housing. The positive rights argument ends up with less of everything unless you are willing to tax a bunch of people at exorbitant rates and violate their rights in doing so. Finally, we reach the third version of the government can solve everything for you argument. And this is the argument that you sometimes see in the Republican Party. And it predates President Trump, although President Trump engages in it. It goes all the way back to compassionate conservatism. This idea that government can solve all social problems if it just sort of meddles around the edges. If government just sort of involves itself in a few key ways, then we can fix all of your problems. This is the do-gooder argument. So the argument here is a little bit different, kind of the same vein as the positive rights argument, but the main argument is that strong families and social fabric cannot exist without governmental intervention. And this is the argument that President Trump sometimes makes. He says there are dying areas in the United States. If we don't provide jobs for dying small towns with dying industries, then the family is going to collapse there, and then those communities collapse, and then you can't have a functioning social fabric, so government has to step in and do something about it. Now, it is true that you need families and functioning social institutions in order to have a social fabric. But if you believe that families collapse because industries die, then I urge you to talk to humans. Okay, families have collapsed in the United States not because of lack of jobs. Lack of jobs has actually followed lack of families. It's the other way around. People don't get married for the tax break. And this leads to policies like the idea that we're going to get an earned income tax credit for a child tax credit for people who have a kid. And there's not a person in America or world history who has ever had a child just for the tax credit. That's not the way this works. Nor do people get married because tax credits are available. The same thing is true when we talk about communities in which politicians promise they're going to bring back jobs that reflect. Right? All we have to do is put a tariff here or a tariff there or a subsidy here or a subsidy there. All we have to do is ban a new technology and suddenly all the jobs will return. Well, this obviously undercuts the individual freedom, property ownership, right to alienate labor that we talked about right at the top. Now, it is true that all of the measures that I'm talking about can help a certain small group of people at the expense of an enormous broader group.
Well, Ben, there's a thing you're not talking about is that it's all well and good you doing tariffs, but unless you can stop the other country from having tariffs, then to me, they're luring companies over there. And Harley Davidson went to Europe because of the steel not being made in America, and also because of the tariffs that they want to avoid paying going into Europe, not the tariffs coming into our country. Not the tariffs Trump's charging, but the tariffs Europe's charging. So they avoid it by going to Europe, plus because they're not buying American steel, they're having to pay the tariff cost over there. Well, guess what? It's because they're charging it to come into our country. We should buy steel from the United States.
Turns out those consumers also have families. Turns out those families also need jobs. And those businesses also need to thrive. You can't take from one person and give to the other and then suggest that you're making everybody better off, because you are not, in fact, making everybody better off. All of these attempts to strengthen families, strengthen churches by getting the government involved, right, they actually
government's involved because it's unfair.
That positive rights regime in which you are guaranteed a job.
The international countries
you're guaranteed an opportunity.
Are sitting there playing with 12 men, and we keep playing for 11. We're not going to win.
All government can do is get the hell out of the way. Like, this is the
Then tell it to the international countries, because that's what's dragging our companies over there because of their tariff costs, and they're going to Europe to avoid paying the costs to get into their country.
group identity for political gain.
So if you want tariffs gone, you got to start with the international tariffs because that's the whole problem.
We can stop
The companies that don't want to do stuff in America anymore.
expensive small ones, which is what we're actually seeing with Amazon in Crystal City and New York City now. What we cannot do is pretend the government is a cure-all. When a politician says to you the government's going to fix your
When
problem,
I say government is a cure, we're not saying that at all.
is the problem. You, the individual, are the cure. The cure to poverty in the United States is simple. Graduate high school, get a full-time job. That is the cure to poverty. 75%.
Well, then talk about culture garbage on TV causing it. Don't go bring it up. What about oxygen? What about these channels that are causing our country to go bad?
Finishing high school in the United States basically means knowing how to write your name half correctly. Right? You can not have babies out of wedlock. Just don't put that thing there without that other thing on it, guys. And you can get a full-time job. Because it turns out there are 7.5 million unfilled jobs in the United States. At risk of death. And that was the history of the United States. To have a job in the town where you grew up because your parents are very... There's nothing about American history that suggests that the pioneering spirit ought to die just because there's no more prairie. And the reality is that your adventure still lies out there on the horizon, and you ought to be willing to move, and you ought to be willing to go there and take advantage of opportunities that may not exist in your hometown. And if that means that you need a community to help lift you up, then the community should help lift you up. If that means you need neighbors to help pay your bus fare and your first month of rent, then you should have neighbors that do that. You should be involved in building of a social fabric. Government can't replace that social fabric, by the way. You have to involve yourself in the social fabric.
The government can't.
Replace the social fabric, all it does is create dependency. You know why? Because you feel a feeling of debt to your family and to your neighbor. When your parents...
Well, you know what? That's why we can't have leftists in there. There's going to be more liberals and more government dependency under 8 years of Obama. And Ben Shapiro wanted Hillary to be president because even though she didn't vote for her, he's like, I'm not going to stop her. If she wins, so what? Well, what the government could control your life, every aspect. That's what Ben wants. That was Ben with everything he could try to stop it. Even if he lives in California, it's a sentimental vote, and I'm with the Republicans to try to fight this.
Not making them easy in poverty, but leading or driving them out of it, which is exactly what conservatism is about. And conservatism posits that there are a series of steps you should go through if, in fact,
yeah, but conservatism isn't just voting when you like the candidate. Sometimes we have no choice. Unless you want socialism, our candidates are just liberal at the worst case. And we make the best of it and try to get what we can from them, like Mark Levin says. We fight for damage control.
And it doesn't create any sense. You actually need to go out and else helping you out. Charity is supposed to start at home, and taking charity is supposed to start at home too.
It is supposed to start at home. But now when you have bad culture and all this leftists in Hollywood driving our culture to the gutter, why don't you address the culture and all the garbage being put out there and all these garbage celebrities that are putting filth out there, like Samantha Bee calling Ivanka Trump a cunt. Why don't you talk about that and all this crappy stuff out there and over-sexing our kids and all these porno movies that our young kids are watching. Why don't you bring that up, Ben Shapiro? Come on.
You are a unique human being, made in God's image.
Yeah, we are made in God's image. We didn't have all this garbage on in the 60s, man. We had good shows like Leave It to Beaver, My Three Sons, Make Me for Daddy, I Love Lucy, The Patty Duke Show. Not anymore, we don't. This garbage is what's affecting our culture and causing our culture to go down the toilet and causing our kids to be run by the state, run by the TV, and, not by parents anymore. We have fatherless homes, and that's what's causing our country to be crap. Come on, Ben. Why don't you say that, Ben? Was he done already? Is he done talking already? It's a 20-minute lecture.
That's one part. Alrighty. So, Q&A time. Now's the fun part.
Well, that's it. It's Q&A time now.
Hurt Feeling Center or something?
Hey everyone, thank you for coming tonight. Before we get started with the Q&A session of tonight's event, I just want to go over a few rules. Before you stand up, just keep in mind...
Focus. What's my thing throwing up?
Please move toward the back and then come in from the back as opposed to coming out here in the front. Secondly, I'm
Focus.
stand on this pink X that's marked on the floor good shot. You look all nice and pretty and skinny.
All right, now it's focusing.
And
If I can
third
focus
and
again.
last
All right, there it
thing,
is.
keep your questions
Okay.
one.
Let's keep the questions. Let's keep the questions now. I'll respond and I'll answer it better than Ben Shapiro now. This is my favorite part. It's my favorite part because I'm going to sit there and answer it for you in a better way. If Ben's answering it, that's all right. It's a question portion.
And also, I do have one more rule that I repeat at all lectures. If you disagree with me, raise your hand and go to the front of the line.
Oh yeah, put the disagreeers in the front. Yeah, that's nice, Ben.
Thanks for braving the 30-degree weather to come to Ohio.
Yeah, for coming to Ohio. Come on, Benny boy. Come on, Ben Shapiro.
I'd really love to see the look on the Democrats' face when we solve clean energy through free market solutions, particularly like advanced nuclear power. We've got these technologies that have been available really since the 1960s, and they've been held back by these ridiculous regulations that have been put in place that it takes 10 years to get a new nuclear plant.
I dropped off. Who cares, though?
The
Don't want to find my papa. I don't care. Just do it because
produce almost every
that's what I want to do. Have an audience or not, doesn't matter.
And I'm curious in terms of, with Trump doing a lot of bringing in kind of the regulatory state, these ridiculous regulations that don't actually keep us safer. What your thoughts are on like advanced nuclear power?
Well, I mean, I think obviously, look, France runs on advanced nuclear power. There are countries in Europe that run on cleaner sources of energy, particularly nuclear power. And it is true that the United States was the #1 country in cutting emissions in the last year.
Cutting emissions, yeah, cutting emissions, cutting emissions.
Natural gas fracking is significantly less emitting than is the use of coal and coal energy. The market is solving a lot of these problems. It is also worthwhile noting that over time, human ingenuity has a pretty solid way of overcoming a lot of the environmental catastrophes that were supposed to destroy humanity over the last half century. And Paul Ehrlich was claiming that we were all going to starve by 1980, basically. And that all was nonsense because
That was all nonsense, yeah.
is an amazing, amazing thing. It's also true that the IPCC estimates about climate change over the course of the coming century, even if you hold that those are true, that may not actually necessitate the sort of government interventionism that the left is claiming, which would be extraordinarily heavy and intrusive. In fact, the folks who just won the Nobel Prize in Economics made a pretty solid case that only at a higher limit than what we are currently projecting would it be worthwhile for us to get involved in the sort of catastrophic solutions that people are talking about. We actually have to balance out economic growth with all of this. I think that people are looking for more green energy solutions or cleaner energy solutions. As you say, the technology has been available for quite a while, and it is counterproductive in the extreme. States like California haven't built a new power plant since like 1970. And California.
Yeah, who doesn't want clean air, Ben? Who doesn't want clean air?
That pollute more. So there's no logic for that.
So, granted, I'd like to preface my comments first by saying I think you commentary is very valuable as well as the United States, and I think it's a shame that your commentary is really sensationalized and taken out of context, and that's so frequently.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
So I have a question.
And I see you're a Bernie supporter, correct?
In a sense, not in the typical way that you described.
I'm not going to parody you for it, but no, I was actually gonna thank you as somebody who disagrees for coming out tonight because that's a really good thing.
That's a very good thing. We got a Bernie supporter, y'all. Got a Bernie
I made fun
supporter.
of you a little bit, but
He's a funny Ben.
Recently, I've been doing more reading on technological disruption as it relates to politics and economics. I read you also are reading the book of the 21st century. Granted, it probably changed my opinion regarding socialization of services and useless class. switch, and voila, universal basic income will certainly work. So I guess, does it require progressive policies socializing more services over time to accommodate technological disruption as they unfold? And do you find that this is a more reasonable reason to support socialism today? And if not, what indicators would you look for to determine that it is the appropriate time to begin the process of developing more socialized systems?
Well, I mean, in terms of developing socialized systems, I think that we have to distinguish here between the one aspect of socialism, which is redistributionism, and another, which is social control of the means of production. I almost never believe in social control of the means of production because I think that results in non-Pareto optimal solutions that ends up benefiting certain groups at the expense of other groups and killing efficiency. The idea of redistribution of a certain amount of income, when I've talked about universal basic income, what I've said is that at a time when we reach the eventuality that millions and millions and millions of people are out of jobs because machines have replaced all of them and they have no capacity to work in any functional forum, that at that point you're going to have some sort of basic income that is available to all people. I will admit I am very skeptical that is right around the corner, just because we've been told that this is right around the corner every time there's a new technological. Now, granted, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this will be the time. Maybe there will be. We have reached the singularity, and technology is going to put everyone with an IQ below 115 out of work or something. And if that's the case, then I've said the universal basic income would probably become a necessity at that point if you actually wish to have a peaceful society. But with that said, I don't think that that's a process that can be gradual without actually disincentivizing people to work. You've seen that they've tried universal basic income schemes in certain areas of Canada and certain areas of Europe. They've actually had to undo them because they've created such a disincentive to work. I think they recently tried it in Ontario and it was a failure. So universal basic income can only be achieved when we basically despair of the capacity of a certain class of human beings to work. I've not despaired of that capacity to work, and it seems to me that as technology improves, what this has done is it's also created new capacities for people to work. I mean, right now, technology, people talk about technology putting a lot of people out of jobs. We have 7.5 million unfilled jobs in the United States right now at a time when we've complained about technology putting a lot of people in small towns out of work. So I don't think that we've reached that point. I think that's a last-ditch attempt. I also think that...
You also think that what, Ben?
The attempt to help out other people, primarily, as I've said before, should be a voluntaristic one. I mean, in my religious... This is why I'm very big on the idea of close-knit communities, particularly religious communities, picking up for each other and helping each other. And the idea of an overarching government coming in...
Yeah, Ben Shapiro.
...water with a big footing process, I think, actually undercuts the social fabric and leads to jealousy and rancor and a lot of rage. Thanks. Pardon me for the coughing. I'm like Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
I promise I'm not.
Yeah, you're not gonna fall, huh? Ben Shapiro, you're not gonna fall off stage and fall and hit your head, are you?
Thank everybody for their questions. Just a reminder, please keep your questions to Ben short and in the form of a question as we continue. We're kind of pressed for time, and we want to make it available for as many people as possible to speak.
Yeah, as many people as possible to speak.
Action, you say that you don't support that at all. And so just a quick scenario, say you have two students, one that comes from like a lower level impoverished area, and they graduate high school but with like a 2.0 and lower ACT scores. What do you have to say about maybe a student who gets a 3.0 from a great school and they get into a lot better schools? Do you think that admissions offices should do something about that?
No, I think that in the only case in which I would believe that this should be a deciding factor is if the person has the same ACT and GPA. So, for example, somebody's from a low-income area and they've experienced more life challenges, but they've somehow overcome all that to achieve the same GPA and ACT as the person who's come from a place with less challenges. That seems like a material factor to take into consideration. The problem is that there's no good metric for determining when all things are that's an easy situation because it's all other things being